March 17th, 1943, 300 miles east of Cape Hatteras. The salt spray stung the faces of the watch crew as Lieutenant Commander Daniel V. Gallery Jr., executive officer of the USS Atik, formerly the Carolyn, scanned the gray Atlantic swells through salt-crusted binoculars. The aging freighter wallowed in the trough of 15-foot waves, her rust-streaked hull and oil-slicked wake painting her as easy prey. "We're the bait," Gallery had written to his wife 3 weeks earlier. "A sheep in wolf's clothing, or rather, a wolf pretending to be sheep. If this works, we'll revolutionize anti-submarine warfare. If it doesn't, well, you'll read about another merchant loss in the papers." Through the mist, a periscope had just broken the surface 4,000 yards to starboard. The trap was set. The concept of the Q-ship, a heavily armed warship disguised as a vulnerable merchant vessel, was born not in American waters, but in the desperate early years of the First World War. British Q-ships had sunk 11 German U-boats between 1915 and 1917 by luring submarines to the surface with the promise of an easy kill, then revealing hidden gun batteries at point-blank range. The Royal Navy called them special service vessels. The Germans called them perfidious traps. International law called them legitimate combatants, provided they flew their battle ensign before opening fire. When Admiral Ernest King assumed command of the United States fleet in December 1941, German U-boats were slaughtering American merchant ships at a rate that threatened to sever the Atlantic lifeline entirely. Operation Drumbeat, the German offensive along the American East Coast, sent 397 Allied ships to the bottom in the first 6 months of 1942. Tankers burned within sight of Miami Beach. Bodies washed ashore on North Carolina's Outer Banks. King, a hard-driving naval officer who had served as a destroyer captain in the First World War, remembered the British Q-ship successes and ordered the concept revived. The United States Navy established Project Love Queen in February 1942 under the operational control of Commander-in-Chief Atlantic Fleet. The mission parameters were explicit: convert civilian merchant vessels into fully armed submarine hunters while maintaining complete external appearance of harmless cargo carriers. Unlike conventional warships that drove U-boats underwater where they became torpedo threats, Q-ships would entice enemy submarines to surface for deck gun attacks, then devastate them with overwhelming firepower at ranges measured in yards, not miles. The Navy selected 5 vessels for conversion. The Carolyn, a 3,175-ton freighter built in 1919 by the New York Shipbuilding Corporation, became USS Atik with the hull designation AK-101. The Wave, a 4,100-ton tanker, became USS Asterion, AK-100. The Eagle, Captor, and Big Horn rounded out the flotilla. Each ship required extraordinary modification while preserving absolute external authenticity. The conversion work took place at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard under conditions of extreme secrecy. Engineers installed 4 4-inch 50 caliber guns, naval rifles capable of firing 33-pound shells to ranges exceeding 15,000 yards, behind hinged deck plates and false cargo hatches. The forward gun nest occupied space where No. 2 cargo hold should be. Aft gun positions replaced winch machinery. Amidships positions hid beneath canvas-covered cargo. Hydraulic rams could drop the false panels in 3.2 seconds. 6 50 caliber machine guns nested in collapsible deckhouse sections. The after deckhouse concealed twin water-cooled Brownings capable of firing 800 rounds per minute. False stanchions and bogus ventilators masked firing positions. Even the lifeboat davits were reinforced to support machine gun mounts that could be deployed during action. The most ingenious modification involved the panic party. Q-ship doctrine required that when a U-boat surfaced, a group of sailors would stage a panicked abandonment, rowing away in a lifeboat while the submarine closed to finishing range. The Navy trained 12-man panic parties in theatrical panic, stumbling, dropping oars, wearing deliberately mismatched civilian clothing. One Atik sailor remembered later, We practiced looking terrified, practiced it until we could sell tickets. Below decks, the transformations were equally dramatic. Reinforced bulkheads protected magazines holding 600 rounds of 4-inch ammunition and 72,000 rounds of 50 caliber. The engine room received armor plating around critical machinery. Damage control parties trained with equipment normally found only on destroyers, portable pumps, collision mats, welding gear. The crew quarters, however, remained unchanged, cramped, poorly ventilated spaces that offered none of the combat ship amenities. The complement of USS Atik numbered 141 officers and men. Lieutenant Commander Harry L. Hicks assumed command. Hicks, age 38, had graduated from the Naval Academy in 1927 and spent his career in surface warfare, including command of the destroyer USS Greer during the ship's famous near-miss engagement with U-652 in September 1941. He understood submarine tactics intimately. His executive officer, Daniel Gallery, who would later command the task group that captured U-505 intact in 1944, brought aggressive tactical thinking to the project. Gallery had served in naval aviation before transferring to surface warfare, giving him appreciation for coordinated operations. "We're not playing defense," he told the crew during their first briefing. "We're hunters pretending to be prey." The crew selection process emphasized versatility. Gunners' mates had to maintain weapons while also performing convincing imitations of merchant sailors. Engineer room personnel needed to coax maximum speed from the aging freighter's steam plant while keeping smoke characteristics indistinguishable from civilian vessels. Even the ship's cook, steward's mate second class James Crawford, had to master quick-reaction food preparation. U-boat encounters might occur during meal service. Training exercises off the Virginia Capes in February 1943 revealed the concept's challenges. The 4-inch guns, designed for steady destroyer platforms, proved difficult to aim from a wallowing freighter. The ship's metacentric height, the measure of stability, was marginal with the added top weight of hidden guns. Sea trials showed Atik could make 12 knots maximum, barely faster than a surfaced U-boat's 17 knots. The panic party needed 7 minutes to launch and clear, an eternity under potential submarine gunfire. The crew drilled relentlessly. Drop the panels, gun crews up, acquire target, fire. 800 repetitions of the sequence. Gunner's mate First Class Robert Sullivan, who had served on the battleship Nevada at Pearl Harbor, supervised the forward 4-inch battery. "On a destroyer, you've got fire control computers, range finders, stable platforms," he explained to his gun crew. "Here, we've got Mark I eyeballs and a ship that rolls like a drunk. You will lead the target by instinct. You will fire on the downroll. You will make every shot count because we won't get a second chance." The Navy's operational doctrine for Q-ships was brutally simple: steam along regular merchant routes, maintain civilian radio discipline, show no unusual alertness, and wait. When a U-boat surfaced, play dead, stop engines, list to port, send the panic party over the side. Let the submarine close to 800 yards or less. Then spring the trap. But the doctrine contained a fatal assumption: that U-boats would continue following their 1917 tactics of surfacing to conserve torpedo inventory. By 1943, German submarine commanders had learned harsh lessons about Allied air power and armed merchantmen. Standing orders from BDU, Befehlshaber der U-Boot, the submarine command, increasingly emphasized submerged attacks. The final briefing before Atik's first war patrol occurred on March 9, 1943, in the operations room at Norfolk Navy Yard. Commander Hicks stood before a chart of the western Atlantic marked with red pins showing recent sinkings. "Gentlemen, we are hunting in a target-rich environment. U-boat wolf packs are operating with impunity in our waters. Our job is to make them pay for their boldness. Remember, we appear weak. We are not weak. We will destroy any submarine foolish enough to surface within range. Questions?" Ensign Richard Stryker, the junior gunnery officer, asked the question on every mind. "Sir." "What happens if they don't surface? What if they just torpedo us? Hicks looked at his executive officer, then back at the assembled crew. Then we go down fighting. But we go down taking vital intelligence with us, proving the concept works or proving it needs refinement. Either way, we advance the science of submarine warfare. Before we continue with the incredible story of how USS Atik faced its ultimate test, I want to ask you to do something important. If you're finding value in these deep-dive historical narratives, the kind of stories that honor our veterans with the detail and respect they deserve, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This channel exists to preserve the memories of the greatest generation, to tell the stories that might otherwise be forgotten. Your subscription helps us continue this mission. We have dozens more stories of American courage waiting to be told, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the skis over Europe to the islands of the Far East. Subscribe now, and let's honor these heroes together. USS Atik departed Norfolk on March 12, 1943, on what the deck log described as Special Patrol Duties, Eastern Sea Frontier. The ship carried no cargo except ballast, but her holds had been rigged with damage control equipment, positioned to maintain the illusion of a loaded freighter if the Germans boarded. Her course took her northeast toward the convoy routes where U-boats concentrated their efforts. The first 3 days proved uneventful. Atik steamed at 9 knots, maintaining the zigzag pattern typical of independent merchants. Radio operators monitored submarine activity reports but maintained strict transmitting silence. The weather turned foul on March 15th, 30-knot winds from the northeast, seas building to 12 feet. The old freighter labored in the swells, shipping green water over the bow. On the bridge, Commander Hicks maintained the appearance of a worried merchant captain. He wore a battered fedora instead of a uniform cap. His bridge coat showed oil stains. Binoculars hung from a frayed strap. To any U-boat captain examining Atik through a periscope, she would appear as nothing more than another aging tramp freighter, undermanned and underarmed, plodding toward the killing grounds. Below decks, the reality differed sharply. In the forward gun station, gunner's mate Sullivan and his crew sat in darkness, waiting. The 4-inch gun was loaded, a 33-pound high-explosive shell in the chamber, powder charge ready. Sullivan had calculated range tables for every likely engagement scenario. If we get a surface sub at 1,000 yards in the sea state, I'm leading by 3 mils right and firing on the downroll, he briefed his crew. The first shot has to hit. It's our only psychological edge. The engineering spaces maintained full battle readiness. Chief Machinist's mate Walter Kowalski, a 24-year Navy veteran who had served on the battleship Texas in the First World War, supervised the main plant. The ship's 1908 steam reciprocating engines were rated for 1,200 horsepower, enough to push Atik to 12 knots in calm seas. But Kowalski knew that combat maneuvers might demand more. He had adjusted safety valves to allow 15% overpressure, a dangerous modification that could crack cylinder heads but might provide the speed margin between survival and destruction. "The old girl's got one last fight in her," Kowalski told his watch section. "When the skipper rings for emergency full, I want every pound of steam on those pistons. I don't care if we blow gaskets. I don't care if we melt bearings. We give him the speed." The panic party trained daily. Their lifeboat, mounted on the starboard quarter, could launch in 7 minutes, still too long by destroyer standards but necessary to maintain the deception. Bosun's mate second class Thomas McKenna led the 12-man team. McKenna, a former merchant seaman who had been torpedoed twice before joining the Navy, brought authentic terror to the performance. "The Germans will be watching with binoculars," he reminded his men. "They'll be looking for anything false. So we do this for real. We fall, we scramble, we row like our lives depend on it because they will." On March 16th, a submarine contact report crackled over the radio. A convoy 300 miles northeast had been attacked. 2 ships sunk, 1 damaged. The U-boat had escaped. Hicks altered course to intercept the probable patrol line. "If there's one, there may be more," he told Gallery. "We position ourselves in their hunting zone and wait." The tactic was sound. German U-boats often operated in loose patrol lines, individual submarines spaced 15 to 20 miles apart, covering a broad front to intercept convoys. A solitary merchant like Atik, sailing independently, presented an attractive target, low risk, high reward. By dawn on March 17th, Atik was positioned 300 miles east of Cape Hatteras, steaming northeast at 9 knots. The weather had moderated slightly, 15-knot winds, 10-foot seas. Visibility was 8 miles under overcast skies. The ocean appeared empty except for the endless gray swells. At 0730 hours, the port lookout spotted something. Object in the water, port beam, 4,000 yards. Hicks raised his binoculars. Nothing. But lookouts in wartime learned to trust their peripheral vision, trained to catch the momentary glint that didn't match wave patterns. He called to the gun stations over the sound-powered phones. "Possible contact port side. Stand by." The object appeared again, a dark vertical shape against gray water, a periscope. Gallery, watching through binoculars from the flying bridge, saw it clearly this time. "Periscope bearing 270, 4,000 yards. He's tracking us." Hicks made no sudden movements. A merchant captain wouldn't see a periscope at 4,000 yards. He maintained course and speed, counting seconds. The submarine commander would be evaluating Atik, measuring her speed, calculating firing solutions, deciding whether to waste a torpedo or surface for a deck gun action. Minutes passed. The periscope disappeared. Hicks felt his pulse accelerate. Had they spooked the submarine, or was the U-boat maneuvering into attack position? At 0815, a lookout shouted, "Submarine surfacing, port quarter, 3,000 yards." The U-boat broke the surface in a cascade of white water, a Type IXC, hull number not yet visible. The conning tower appeared first, then the deck gun, then the full length of the pressure hull, 252 feet of German engineering. She was trimmed bow up, already preparing for action. Hicks resisted the urge to turn. Instead, he grabbed the bridge phone. "Panic party away. Engine room, make as if we're stopping. Gun crews, absolute silence until I give the word." The U-boat steadied on course, her diesel engines pulling her through the swells at 16 knots, closing the range rapidly. Through binoculars, Hicks could see German sailors scrambling onto the forward deck, manning the 3.9-inch gun mounted ahead of the conning tower. The submarine was going to finish Atik with gunfire, conserving torpedoes for larger targets. The panic party launched. 12 sailors tumbled into the lifeboat with practiced chaos, dropping oars, shouting in mock panic, rowing frantically away from the ship. McKenna stood in the stern, waving his arms in apparent desperation. To the Germans, it would look like standard merchant crew behavior. Atik wallowed to a stop, listing slightly to port. Smoke from her stack thinned as the engineers reduced steam. On the bridge, Hicks watched the U-boat close, 2,000 yards, 1,800, 1,500. The German deck gun fired a ranging shot. The shell splashed 200 yards ahead of Atik's bow. "Hold," Hicks said into the phone. "Steady, let him close." The U-boat came on, 1,200 yards, 1,000 yards. The deck gun fired again, a hit on Atik's forward mast sending splinters flying. The old freighter shuddered. "Hold," Hicks repeated. Every second felt like an hour. At 800 yards, the U-boat turned to present a broadside, her deck gun crew working to reload. The submarine's commander stood on the conning tower bridge, binoculars trained on Atik. He was close enough now to count rivets, close enough to see crew faces. Too close to escape. Hicks keyed the general announcing system. His voice was ice-cold calm. "All stations, execute." The false panels dropped. In 3.2 seconds, USS Atik transformed from helpless victim to warship. The forward 4-inch gun swung toward the target as Sullivan's crew acquired the U-boat in their sights. The aft battery elevated. Machine guns appeared from collapsed deckhouses. The American battle ensign broke from the main mast. Sullivan laid his sight picture. The U-boat's conning tower centered in the reticle, the ship's roll carrying his aim through the target. On the downroll, at the moment of maximum stability, he pulled the firing lanyard. The 4-inch gun roared. The shell crossed 800 yards in 1.3 seconds. It struck the U-boat's pressure hull just aft of the conning tower with a brilliant orange flash. The explosion punched through the outer hull casing, but the main pressure hull held. Before the German crew could react, the second 4-inch gun fired. This shell hit low on the waterline, penetrating the ballast tanks. Water erupted around the impact point. The U-boat's captain, later identified as Captain Lieutenant Heinrich von Schroeder, commanding U-154, recovered instantly from the shock. His deck gun crew abandoned their weapon and scrambled for the conning tower hatch. Von Schroeder screamed orders down the voice tube. The submarine's diesels roared to full power, black smoke belching from the exhausts as she attempted to dive. Sullivan fired again. The third shot missed, plunging into the ocean 10 yards beyond the target. The sea state and Atik's roll combined to throw the aim off. He adjusted, compensated, waited for the roll. The fourth shot hit the conning tower directly. The armor-piercing shell penetrated the pressure-resistant structure and detonated inside. The explosion killed von Schroeder and 3 watch officers instantly. The submarine's control center, located directly below the conning tower, filled with smoke and shrapnel. Machine guns opened fire, tracers arcing across the water. 50 caliber rounds raked the U-boat's deck, killing the gun crew who hadn't made it below. Bullets sparked off the conning tower, ricocheted off deck fittings, punched through the thin outer hull casing. The U-boat was wounded but not dead. With her captain killed, command devolved to the first watch officer, Oberleutnant Zur C. Klaus Hartmann. Hartmann, age 26, had survived 14 patrols. He knew U-154 could not dive with the conning tower breached, could not fight with the deck gun crew dead, could not outrun the American ship on the surface. He had one option: submerge partially using the main ballast tanks, present minimum target profile, and fire torpedoes. Flood main ballast. Both torpedo rooms prepare tubes 1 and 2, steer 090. The submarine began to settle by the stern, her bow rising as she attempted a crash dive. But the damage to the ballast tanks made controlled descent impossible. She wallowed, half submerged, her bow pointing skyward at 20 degrees. Hicks saw the torpedo danger immediately. Right full rudder, all ahead flank, bring all guns to bear. Atik's elderly engines responded with everything Kowalski could give them. The ship heeled into the turn, presenting her stern to the submarine, decreasing the target profile. The turn brought the aft 4-inch battery into action. Gunner's Mate 3rd Class Joseph Martinez commanded the aft mount. Martinez, a 20-year-old from San Antonio, Texas, had never fired a shot in anger before this moment. He had joined the Navy 3 months after Pearl Harbor, trained at Great Lakes, volunteered for special duty without knowing what special meant. Now he stood behind a naval rifle, aiming at a submarine 700 yards distant, with the knowledge that the next 60 seconds would determine whether Atik survived. Martinez laid his sight on the submarine's exposed bow. The target was shrinking as the U-boat settled deeper. He fired. The shell hit the forward torpedo room. The explosion was catastrophic. The detonation triggered sympathetic explosions in the torpedoes stored in the space, 3 G70 electric torpedoes, each warhead containing 613 pounds of hexanite high explosive. The forward third of U-154 disintegrated in a massive fireball that sent a mushroom cloud of spray and debris 300 feet into the air. The submarine's back broke. Her forward section, what remained of it, plunged toward the bottom. The aft section, still containing the engine rooms and most of the crew, remained buoyant for another 20 seconds. Men scrambled from the hatches, some wearing escape apparatus, most without. They hit the cold March water and began swimming. Hicks ordered ceasefire. The immediate threat was ended. Atik came about, approaching the survivors. Standard doctrine required taking prisoners for intelligence value. The ship's boat crew prepared to launch. Then the lookout screamed, "Torpedo wake starboard beam." A second U-boat. The torpedo had been in the water for 53 seconds, launched from U-166, which had been shadowing the engagement from 4,000 yards. Captain Lieutenant Gerhard Thetter had watched the destruction of U-154 with horror and rage. Now he was executing revenge. The torpedo, a G7A compressed air type running at 44 knots, closed the distance in the time it took Hicks to shout the warning. The ship's helmsman threw the wheel hard over. Atik began to turn. Not enough. The torpedo struck Atik on the starboard side, 6 feet below the waterline, directly beneath the forward gun mount. The 800-pound warhead detonated with focused fury. The explosion blew a hole 20 feet across in the ship's hull. Number 1 and Number 2 holds flooded instantly. The blast killed Sullivan and his entire gun crew. 5 men vaporized in the explosion. The forward mast came down, crashing across the deck in a tangle of wire and canvas. Atik's bow dropped 10 feet in 5 seconds. She was mortally wounded. Hicks knew it instantly. Years of experience in damage control told him the ship could not survive, but training and discipline held. Damage control parties forward, close all watertight doors. All hands prepare to abandon ship. Kowalski in the engine room felt the explosion through the deck plates. The steam plant remained functional, but with the bow flooding, the propeller was lifting out of the water. He ordered steam secured to prevent boiler explosion when the ship went down. On deck, chaos and discipline fought for control. Wounded men screamed. Others dragged them toward lifeboats. The after 4-inch gun crew remained at their posts, traversing the gun to bear on the second U-boat's periscope, now visible 3,000 yards distant. Ensign Stryker, the junior gunnery officer, took command of the aft battery. Martinez was already loading another shell. "We'll fire until we can't," Stryker said. He laid the gun on the periscope bearing and fired. The shell fell short by 100 yards. Range estimation was impossible with the ship settling by the bow. He elevated and fired again. This shot passed over the periscope with 10 yards to spare. U-166, seeing Atik's determination to fight, dived deep and cleared the area. Thetter would later report engaging an armed merchant cruiser that had destroyed U-154 before he was forced to withdraw due to unexpectedly heavy and accurate gunfire from the target vessel. Atik was dying. Her bow was underwater to the forward mast. The list to starboard increased as flooding spread. Hicks gave the order to abandon ship at 0847, 32 minutes after the first periscope sighting. The crew abandoned ship with discipline. Wounded were placed in lifeboats first. The panic party's boat returned and took aboard 20 men. Other boats launched successfully. But the sea was cold, 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and the nearest land was 300 miles distant. Gallery supervised the evacuation from the boat deck, counting heads, ensuring no one was left behind. He saw Hicks still on the bridge. "Captain, time to go." Hicks waved him away. "Go, I'm last." At 0903, Atik's bow touched the bottom at 400 fathoms. Her stern rose vertically from the water, propeller still visible. For 40 seconds she hung there, a testament to her builder's craftsmanship. Then she slid beneath the surface. Commander Hicks went down with his ship. He was 39 years old. The lifeboats waited for rescue that never came. Radio calls had been sent, but the nearest surface vessels were 2 days away. The cold water killed half the survivors in the first 8 hours. More died overnight. When dawn broke on March 18th, only 41 men remained alive. Lieutenant Commander Gallery took command of the survivors. "We row," he said. "We row toward the shipping lanes. We row until someone finds us or we can't row anymore." They rowed. For 28 hours they rowed. Exhausted men collapsed over oars. Others took their places. Gallery kept them moving with stories, songs, curses, prayers, whatever worked. At 1400 hours on March 19th, the destroyer USS Benson spotted the lifeboats. 37 men were still alive. 4 more died aboard Benson despite medical care. 33 men survived the sinking of USS Atik. 108 did not. The loss of USS Atik represented the single greatest casualty toll of the American Q-ship program. When word reached Norfolk on March 20th, Admiral King immediately convened a board of inquiry to examine whether the concept remained viable. The classified findings were devastating. The board determined that Q-ships, while theoretically sound, were obsolete in the face of evolved submarine tactics. By 1943, German U-boat commanders had standing orders to minimize surface actions. Improved torpedo technology, particularly the G70 electric torpedo with its wakeless approach, made submerged attacks the preferred method. The element of surprise that Q-ships relied upon was nearly impossible to achieve. Furthermore, the board noted that Q-ships occupied skilled crews who could be better employed on destroyers, destroyer escorts, and aircraft carriers, platforms that were proving far more effective at killing submarines. The conversion costs approached $500,000 per ship. For the same investment, the Navy could build 3 submarine chasers. The recommendation was unanimous: terminate the Q-ship program. Admiral King concurred on March 27, 1943. The surviving Q-ships, USS Asterion, Eagle, Captor, and Big Horn, were recalled from patrol and returned to merchant service. None had engaged enemy submarines. The concept that had seemed so promising in January was dead by April. But Atik had accomplished something significant. The destruction of U-154 demonstrated that concealed weaponry could defeat surfaced submarines decisively. The tactical lessons learned, particularly regarding rapid gun deployment and the necessity of first-shot accuracy, were incorporated into armed guard training for merchant ships. Hundreds of merchant vessels received upgraded armament and trained gun crews who understood that aggressive action, not passive flight, offered the best survival odds. The intelligence gathered from U-154's wreck, discovered by the oceanographic vessel Atlantis II in 1978 at position 36 degrees north, 74 degrees west, revealed details of Type IXC construction that influenced post-war submarine design. The wreck showed that American 4-inch shells could penetrate U-boat pressure hulls under the right conditions, validating the gun caliber choice. USS Atik received 1 battle star for World War II service. Commander Harry Hicks was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Gallery received the Silver Star for his actions during and after the engagement. Gallery went on to command the escort carrier USS Guadalcanal, and in June 1944 became the only U.S. Navy officer to capture an enemy submarine at sea when his task group forced U-505 to surrender intact. 33 survivors received Purple Hearts. 5 received commendations for valor during the battle. Gunner's Mate 3rd Class Joseph Martinez received the Bronze Star for his destruction of U-154's forward section, the shot that prevented the damaged submarine from completing a torpedo attack. The families of the lost crew members received letters from Admiral King commending their sacrifice. The letters carefully avoided mentioning Q-ships or revealing operational details. The families were told their men died aboard a naval auxiliary vessel engaged in anti-submarine operations. Many families spent decades not knowing the true circumstances of death. The program remained classified until 1963. In 1947, the the Navy established the Commander Harry L. Hicks Memorial Award at the Naval Academy, given annually to the graduating midshipman who best exemplifies aggressive tactical thinking in surface warfare. The award citation specifically mentions Hicks's decision to close with U-154 despite the tactical risks. The wreck of USS Atik remains on the bottom of the Atlantic, 400 fathoms down, 12 miles from where U-154 rests. Neither wreck has been disturbed. The Navy considers both sites war graves. In 1981, a memorial plaque was placed at the Naval Station Norfolk commemorating Atik and her crew. The names of the 108 dead are inscribed on the tablets of the missing at the Cambridge American Cemetery in England. Commander Hicks's name appears first, followed alphabetically by his crew. Gunner's Mate First Class Robert Sullivan, Chief Machinist's Mate Walter Kowalski, Boatswain's Mate Second Class Thomas McKenna, and 105 others. Ordinary men who volunteered for extraordinary duty. The Q-ship concept never revived. Modern submarine warfare, dominated by nuclear propulsion, long-range torpedoes, and sophisticated sensors, made the close-range ambush tactics impossible. But the courage of Atik's crew remained relevant across every generation of naval service. The ship's motto, chosen by Commander Hicks and painted on the bulkhead of the wardroom, was never officially recorded in naval registers, but Gallery remembered it clearly when interviewed in 1976. Fortis Audier, Courage to Dare. In May 1943, 6 weeks after Atik's loss, the destroyer escort USS Hicks, D-63, was launched at the Charleston Navy Yard. She was named in honor of Commander Harry Hicks and served with distinction in the Atlantic and Mediterranean theaters, earning 4 battle stars. She survived the war and was decommissioned in 1946. No ship has since borne the name Atik. The U-boat commanders who survived the war learned the truth slowly, through post-war records and historians' research. The armed merchant cruiser that Captain Lieutenant Theder reported engaging was nothing but an old freighter manned by sailors who understood that sometimes the best weapon is audacity. Lieutenant Commander Gallery, in his memoirs published in 1965, wrote of that March day, "We set a trap. The trap worked. 1 submarine died. 108 Americans died. In the cold mathematics of war, that trade is called victory. But I remember the faces of those men in the lifeboats, and I wonder if we were hunting submarines or if we were just bait that got lucky once before the hook was set in us." Their story must be remembered, not as a cautionary tale of failed tactics, but as testament to sailors who volunteered for the most dangerous duty imaginable. To appear weak while being strong, to invite attack while preparing devastation, to sail knowingly into the kill zone, and trust that courage and gunnery would prevail over steel and torpedoes. They were the men of USS Atik. They sailed into legend on a March morning in 1943. The Atlantic holds them still.